Jesse, we're doing something special for next season. What is it?
The next season plan was questions from the community.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of great questions from the community. Some of them have been brief, and we are going to incorporate them into season 4. So while we're doing bonus episodes, dear listeners, send your questions for season 4 to jauntymantis@gmail.com and keep them brief.
Make him as long as you want. Ignore him. He doesn't even read the emails.
That's right, but he will awkwardly read them on the episode, so please keep it brief.
We could take the word picture interrogatives that you made with your fingers on a keyboard and transmit it through the medium of Spotify to an audience of tens.
And
So yeah, write us with your questions.
so, just in case this doesn't pan out, Jesse, this is the Jaunty Mantis podcast about TTRPGs and creative questions from curious gamers. And I have a question for you about our new West Rift game, Rifts game. Uh, when you had said at the end of game last time, I don't remember exactly how you put it, but you had taken a temperature with the group and said, is it all right with you guys that this has gone a bit goofy?
I think what I said is I hope you all don't mind that I'm leaning into the silliness a bit more.
Yes. Yes. And I was surprised that you had said that because we have a dog boy character. We have a cactus man character.
Yeah, but I didn't have to point out that the dog man was playing poker. Like we could have just let that be a thing
Yeah.
without me referencing the velvet painting.
Yes. Yes. Our dog boy character, played by Kurt, sat down to play a hand of poker, and jokes ensued. And I think that's kind of what I want to talk about for this bonus episode, which is like, at what point does silly get too silly? And do all games have to have some sort of element of seriousness? You once said that the GM's responsibility, at least as far as you saw it, was to be the straight man in the group, to be
Yeah.
like the constant, the straight and narrow. This is how it is. I react as the NPCs. The NPCs react as normal, so that the player characters can perpetrate all sorts of goof 'em ups and jokes.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd say it's the responsibility, but I said it's a thing you can do if you think that's what your players want. Look at me being nuanced, wily, and squirming out of being held accountable for my words.
You son
Yeah.
of a bitch.
Well, that's what I do. I'm an oily varmint. All right, we're back at it. Yeah, I think one of the things is I never want to do is I never want to steal the show as a GM because
Mhm.
I feel not that it's like the GM should fade into the background and just be this neutral arbitrator, but I feel like I got plenty of moments to make it the Jesse show. And I think one of the things I'm really enjoying about running this Rifts game is I'm going very opposite to type of my normal DM style.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
which is one of those things that I've said on the podcast before. I saw a thing today. Are we supposed to call it the pod? I keep hearing people refer to their podcast as on the pod.
It's an unsuccessful medium full of nerds and losers and comedians, so you can call it whatever the fuck you want.
Okay. Uh, so yeah, I forgot where I was going because I second guessed the choice of the word pod people. Um, I was saying something about the thing with
You were
this.
going against type.
I'm good. Thank you. Yes. I'm going against type because one of the things that I've said on the podcast, and I got it from Chris, who really loves the Forgotten Realms, um, is that like you're a player too. And,
Mhm.
I mean, you see the characters I play. Like I
Mm-hmm.
tend to go all in on the voices and the character and yada yada. So I'm just like, I'm gonna do that with my NPCs in this one. Because I also feel like Rifts gives me a license to be a little sillier,
Mm-hmm. A
but
little, yeah.
also given the mechanics of the game and the setting of the vampire kingdoms that we're in, there's another shoe
Mm-hmm.
waiting to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job of telegraphing there's this whole other shoe out there, like that will not be silly. And I think the silliness is going to make the horror all the better.
Yeah, I hope so. I think that initially one would fear that the silliness would detract from the horror element. Like horror is very difficult to do in role-playing games because the buy-in is so steep. Like we're nerds sitting around a computer, set up with Zoom or around a table. We're all having fun. We got drinks, we got Cheetos, all the good things. So it's really kind of difficult to get invested in a horror setting. That being said, things can be scared or fucked up or weird or threatening. We played Trophy Dark, and grown men around a kitchen table by the lake at 11:30 at night. We're like, can we play this at tomorrow at noon?
Yeah, when the sun's up, please.
I mean, granted, we were drunk, but I've played in horror games. It's a difficult vibe to keep going, even if you get the initial buy-in.
So I've said in regards to horror on the podcast before, I think horror is hard to do because in order to do it, the players have to be on board with having their agency removed
Hmm.
because that's what makes it a horror game. And I've talked to smarter people than me about it since then. What's up, Mark Hare? Um, who also loves the Forgotten Realms. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Perfect.
Uh, and I'm rethinking that. And I was starting to think with at least the town of Las Lamitas, which is where we're now set. And I don't know if you guys are going for it, but that whole thing I had talked about before with the Dragonlance campaign
Hmm.
about how they were really invested in the town because I just made everybody really nice and like
Hmm.
them. I'm kind of trying to do the same thing. So when the horror happens, it won't be to your characters,
Hmm.
but it will be as a consequence of your actions.
I think that's a smart move, right? Because people can always, you called it agency, but people can always be defiantly um uh obstinate or defiantly difficult. Well, I would never do that because I was hanging out in the inn in the shadowed corner. I'm a drow assassin. I would never reveal myself, that kind of thing. It's difficult to get certain players to remove that, boat quarterstaff size stick out of their ass to get them to go along with the game that you invested time and energy in to get them involved in. And with a horror setting, maybe the better example is like, I don't know if you've ever encountered this, but I've run games with traps where they didn't make whatever check they were supposed to make, whether that was rolled by me on their behalf using the rules or they rolled it or whatever, and then somebody in that group wants to argue with you that it would have never have happened because they totally would have seen it coming and they would have checked every 5-inch square of the dungeon step by step with all of the following techniques, and their characters an experienced trapsmith, and they would have seen it coming a mile away. And as you're just like, God, thank you for making me regret spending my time running this game for you. And so I think people can be like that when it comes to difficult material,
Yeah.
and so I think having it happen to the NPCs, I think, is a very smart move, because that builds that sense of terror around the player characters and lets them react to it and
Well,
lets you build the tension.
you know what else I'm gonna do
Hmm.
when the monstrosity busts through the wall, like it,
Like
you
the
know,
Kool-Aid Man.
yeah. Um, when that happens and the monsters come through going, oh yeah, when they start ripping into the townsfolk first, I'm gonna have the players describe how the townsfolk die.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Like we did with Trophy, because I re-listened to the We Played Trophy episode and was
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, I got to use variations of that for everything.
Yeah, there's two kinds of things that can come blasting through a wall, in my opinion. One is the Kool-Aid Man. The other can be 12 dogs and a robot all wearing tactical army SWAT gear and helmets.
Yeah, that's
And
riffs right there.
mhm,
Or they
that's
might
what
just,
I.
a bunch of fog starts pouring through the ventilation system, and next thing you know, there's a bunch of vampires. Whee!
That's right.
Riff's vampires are so weird. Oh my God, they're so weird.
Those are some beautiful dogs. But all right, so your plan then, because like I would avoid doubling down on the humor for just that reason, but I'm very intrigued to see how it plays out in your game. I'm kind of the opposite GM than you are. My default state is to do wacky characters and funny shit and let the like use it to kind of like break the ice with the player characters and show them that like I'm not taking this super seriously, so they shouldn't either.
Yeah.
Um, our Evron game in Days of Yore as we get farther and farther away from it. I had a battle like in a monastery where they had to defend it like Old West style, and the oncoming troops were all Karnathi deadites and dead soldiers and zombie soldiers, and the player characters were from Siri and they had Warforged in their units, and we made up several hilariously personality themed Warforged, and then I acted each of them out over Zoom in front of the group, and it seemed to go over pretty well.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this then, that just occurred to me, because you had said something about how you're afraid to do that because you don't want to steal the spotlight. And I'm so much of an egomaniac, it never occurred to me not to do that because I might be stealing the spotlight. So you be honest with me. Does my GM style have a tendency to steal the spotlight then, since I
I
will
mean,
go over the top?
not from me. Like, because I'm also an egomaniac who was just like, yeah, like I'm fine with it because I'll just like, well, fine, I see you and I raise.
Mm-hmm.
um, but for the more wallflowery players, maybe it does. I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I enjoy playing in your games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think it's just a tonal shift I'm deliberately making. And I think one of the reasons too, if I'm being totally honest about it, is like it's it had been in the past. I wanted to give, if I was going to spend time of thinking up a trait for an NPC or personality or who they are, to really have them be engaged in the story. It
Mm-hmm.
was way more work than I was willing or able to do, was
Mm-hmm.
my thinking. And so I, to save myself time, wouldn't. And so my NPCs were, sort of flat-ish, maybe an accent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And on this one, I'm just like, yeah, why not? Lean into it. I got all these tools available. It doesn't have to be more than a silly voice. What would be fun for me? And
Mm-hmm.
like you had said in a session, you had listed off an extemporaneous list of hobo names, which was brilliant. And I just took one of them and I was like, Unforgettable William is the piano player at the saloon.
Yeah.
And we're just going to lean into it. And I think this is a much better give or take, or give and
Mm-hmm.
take, like of bouncing off each other with the silliness. And it will at times get very serious, but like if I want to tell like a hardcore grim fantasy story, I'm probably not going to do it in riffs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it in a game whose mechanics support it better.
Just out of curiosity, because I completely agree with you. What game's mechanics? I'm going to put you on the spot because you have a vast library of gaming books. You're the mechanics guy, and you're always sharing games with me. But what game system do you think would be better suited to a more serious game than something like
Okay.
Rifts?
So I would probably I'm going to pull it out for review right here. Tales of Equestria, the My Little Pony role playing game. Uh,
Interesting choice.
yeah, thank you. I would say it depends on what kind of grim you want.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a stylistically grim, I would run something in either the World of Darkness or the Chronicles of Darkness,
Mm-hmm.
like those serious storytelling games where like the whole mythos, the books is all designed to give you this gothic punk storytelling attitude. I mean, those are the words they use, gothic punk, right? If I wanted to do it with mechanics and also that same theme, I would probably do it in like either like Zweihander or Warhammer Fantasy role-playing
Hmm.
game or one of the other Zweihander books. I mean, there's like it's not Colonial Gothic. There's like an American Revolution Zweihander book where it's like it's the revolution and the British have like weird occult evil magic allies and like you can be a whaler. Um, or Blackbirds is another like powered by Zweihander game. Um, yeah,
Right.
but probably if I wanted mechanics, I'd do a percentile system like that.
How
Uh,
many serious games have you played in or ran?
um, I think I've run about two or three.
Wow. That's
From
that's almost nothing when you
yeah,
consider how many years have you been gaming?
yeah. Since ooh, geez, fifth grade, 1989
Hmm.
ish.
Yeah. Maybe that's more of the topic right there. Like, do people run serious games? Like, I'm trying to picture, I mean, they're friends primarily of yours. Mark, who had been running the science fiction games, and then Chris, who's been running like a long-standing Forgotten Realms campaign. Are those serious games? Like, would you, I know you haven't played in them, but like you've heard about them.
I would say from what Mark has told me, not to say silly things can't happen in his game or the
Hmm.
long-running sci-fi game, but there were some pretty serious themes and tones and moods that he was putting into that story. And having played in his Star Trek game, I imagine it was successful.
Right.
Um, and as far like there are high stakes for people in Chris's game, but it is way everything that preventing a magical apocalypse in the Forgotten Realm and plane hopping and like Zaz Tam, the Lich of Thay, being like a major villain who's trying to like create versions of himself in every multiverse, everything that goes with that, which is
Hmm.
not like the most super serial, in my opinion, not to say that the people playing aren't serious about the game's outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to play in both of those games, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that begs the bigger question of like, are serious games possible? At least not just like uniquely possible or randomly possible, but like I've played in and tried to run more serious games. They've just never gone anywhere. you
yeah,
know like it's a failure. That's why I doubled down on like, hey, this is supposed to be fun, let's just like have goof 'em ups and joke around, and you guys use your imagination. It's easier to get nerds to use their imagination in a group setting when you take a lot of the serious yokes off of everybody's shoulders and just remind everybody that this is a game of imagination and we're all just here to have fun and joke around, and it's okay to do funny voices if you want, and like I'll do it right in front of you as the GM. I'll throw the first punch, so to speak. Oh, that's a bad analogy. I'll take the first step. You'll see my face get bright red as I realize I'm doing voices in front of people that I know. They like can see the vulnerable side of me, but I don't have a problem being vulnerable in front of my players to show them that like this is what we can achieve. We can have a fun game of goof 'em ups, and that's kind of the point. Um, but a serious game eludes me. It's like clean comedy and stand-up comedy. Like it's very difficult to do, and if somebody's good at it, that's clearly got to be the highest level, or at least it is in my brain, my weird lizard brain.
yeah, and in playing in serious games, and I know this is, I don't know if this will sound plausible, but like the most serious game I ever played in was the vampire LARP I played in when I was a teenager, or the one
Hmm.
that I played in that Rich ran.
Hmm.
Just doing like not to say that we weren't silly as hell when we were out of character, but
Hmm.
like when we were in character, it was real life and death, real serious stuff, real we are monsters and have to hold on to our humanity. And like I loved it.
Mm.
I loved that level of, I don't know, catharsis. I mean, people talk about like bleed in role play of like feeling the things your character feel, as some people are like,
Interesting.
don't ever do that. Some people, but like it's a hell of a drug. you know?
Uh-huh.
Um, like, and one of the things that is very much on my bucket list is I really want to play Wraith the Oblivion. Are you
Mm.
familiar with Wraith the Oblivion?
I've heard of it. I have no idea. I've heard you say the name of this game a number of times, but I don't know anything about it.
Your character's dead. You're a ghost. You're trapped in the Shadowlands, just on the other side of the world of living. There is a brutal medieval dictatorship of ancient ghosts called the Hierarchy that rule the underworld and made a law that you cannot interact with mortals, with the living. You are held to your existence by the things you cared about and the objects, places, and people that meant something to you while you're alive. That if those things go away, you get sucked into oblivion and are utterly destroyed.
Wow.
So you have to break that law to protect them. Like that is protecting your fetters and keeping up with them and driving your passions. Like my character died before his business could really make it. His overwhelming passion is to see the company he founded becoming a world success. So now there's a ghost on the side of this company. But if you make an enemy of another ghost and they figure this out, they're going to go after your company from the
Mhm.
others. Like there'll be a ghost haunting your company. Like, and to make things even more serious, when you die in the cosmology of this game, you're like all the worst parts of your character's self become a wholly sentient entity that wants nothing more than for you to be drawn into oblivion and your existence to utterly end. And that is your shadow, and it has its own character sheet, and it's played by somebody else at the table who whispers to you and offers you its powers in a tight spot in exchange for concessions.
Interesting.
So yeah, serious game, you know. Uh oh, wait, were you here the session we played Alice is Missing?
No, no. I was not. I was not there for that.
That was a serious game.
I know what Alice is Missing is, but for the audience, go ahead. What is Alice is Missing?
Alice is Missing is a game where you are all people who know a teenage girl who has gone missing. And the game is played entirely via text message, while you are all trying to like figure out what happens. And there's event cards that come up that reveal new suspects or situations or locations to go, and everyone's just texting to each other. And there's like a soundtrack, and it's a
Interesting.
lot. And the group of 40-year-old guys played and did a great job with it. Just
Awesome.
maybe I could play Wraith with them, but I don't want to do that over Zoom.
That's another good point, right? Um, like under what medium, I don't know what the right word is, but under what mechanism should you play a serious game? Zoom. Man, Zoom sucks. I mean, I love it and I hate it. Anybody like I before the pandemic, I was working from home since like 2005, 2006. So I was no stranger to like working from home and what that did to a person and the kind of changes you had to make in your life in order to like keep yourself from going insane. And once the pandemic happened, I think we reached this cultural touchstone where many, many other people started to understand the things that I had said over the years. Because whenever I had mentioned, like, yeah, I work from home, people would be like, oh, must be nice. And it's like, look, it is nice. There was some nice parts to it, but there was some parts that really sucked. And one of the parts that really sucked was we were using GoToMeeting back then because Zoom wasn't a big thing. But like uh, as anybody who has Zoom calls as a part of their regular job, it is fucking draining and
Oh
it
yeah.
is distracting it's difficult to pay attention. There's all sorts of issues with Zoom. There's talking over each other or having latency issues or whatever. So like would it serve a serious game to be done in person or would that just be better or could you do a serious game over Zoom?
See, I think. Well, what do you think about that? Because this is another thing I always answer all the questions and go off on these long-winded things and fail to ask you. So what do you think?
What do I think about whether you could do a serious game over Zoom?
Yeah.
I think you can, but you shouldn't.
Okay.
Because I think that there's too many distractions. There's like for all the reasons I just mentioned, like it's important to keep it lighthearted and fun and goofy in order to keep people engaged. Otherwise, like we have our games on Sunday nights, which is a good way to go about it, but I remember doing games on nights where it was just like I'm just fucking tired. Like we've all have difficult things we have to deal with in life. You have a difficult day at work or a difficult week at work or a difficult month at work or whatever. And you are just fucking drained when you get, behind that screen and you're just like, I am having trouble mustering the energy to do that. Whereas I'm an extrovert. So I have found that being in person and being social gives me energy, and that's one of the things I love about in-person games is like I may dread having to go and show up in person, but as soon as I get there, that all just melts away and I'm having a great time. I'm loving interacting with everybody. And so I mean, if I was going to do a serious game, I would make the reservation have to be that it would be in person. What about you?
I feel like there's got to be some tech tools out there I'm just unaware of that make it probable. But I think to be honest, like the best time and place for me to play a serious game is the alternate universe where I stayed a theater major and I was back in college and I knew some other theater kids that wanted
Mhm.
to do a serious, dramatic, gothic horror, gothic punk storytelling. Like that was the window when I could really have done a
Right.
serious game. One of the things like A Team, my in-person games, there's A Team and B Team, and they name themselves that with some of the same members. Don't look, I'm not judging them.
Hmm.
But A Team, like they're all such sweethearts. Like they'd never want to move or act against each other. So one of the things, I don't think you have to have player versus player conflict or even just inter-party conflict in a serious game, but it's likely to come up.
Hmm.
And it's one of the reasons my vampire campaign kind of tanked. Um, is they just were really uncomfortable with having conflict with each other at the table. And I'm like, that's cool because that's not what my group of people I play with want to do. So why would I make them do that?
Right.
Um, yeah.
Well, you mentioned, to kind of go off of your earlier days, because you had mentioned, doing that gothic punk, the vampire style games, run by Rich. And you had said that when you weren't in character, there was this goofy aspect to it where you guys were joking around. Can you go into more about that? Because what I'm wondering is, like, would a serious game be better serviced by breaks for goofiness? I don't know how that would work, but first I wanted to get your opinion on, like, or at least tell me how that would work. Like you were waiting for your scene and you guys would be joking around, and then as soon as it was your time, you go in there and Van Damme, serious, go in and make it happen.
Yeah. You would either be waiting on a storyteller or like you just be taking a break. Cause I mean, when you're playing a live action role playing game and you're at least, doing it, trying to do it seriously, like you are in character all the time. You're pretending to be someone else all the time, or you're thinking of what would this person I made do? And then for me, eventually got to just like, I am that person. I do this. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to vent. And I think you've hit on something really, really key. I went to shortly before the pandemic. I wanted to see if I could capture that old lightning in a bottle again. And I found a LARP in Oklahoma City. And I went to this vampire LARP to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, cool. And I didn't know anybody. So I didn't have anybody to be silly with at the silly breaks. And
Interesting.
it didn't hit. It was a really well produced game. They had interesting storylines. People were serious about their characters and they were costumed. I just didn't have anybody to goof off with
Interesting.
like in between. And I'm thinking as you said that, huh, I wonder if that's why it didn't hit for me.
Interesting.
I mean, it was in the chapel of a cemetery that like it was cool setting, like
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So if that let's take that to its logical next step then. Could you do that with like a 5e D&D game? Let's say that you wanted to have a more serious game. Could you have outlets of goofiness, and is that a component of the game itself, or is it like a sanctioned break? Like, hey everybody, this is our opportunity. Like, guys, I want you to have goofy fun right now. You know what
That's
I mean?
likely to
Like,
work well.
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like if maybe one of the keys in this hypothesis of like how to have a great serious game is to like have these off moments of goofiness, like is it too much to like set that up, or is that
I
manufacturing something that isn't possible?
No, I think you could probably set that up. I mean, there's cues. Like one of the things that we did, well, I'm trying to remember what it was. There's like a whole hand gesture system in Vampire LARP for
Mhm.
like some of them are representing vampiric powers that cannot be like actually replicated. But then there's another one. I think it was like this. This is like out of character. Like
Which
if
is
I
you're
do
holding a
this and
hand
I,
up with two fingers
yeah, if I
up for, yeah,
like
okay.
I am OC right now. Like anything
Hmm.
I say is not in game and it is not my character. And you try to keep that to a minimum when you're in a scene with somebody. But like it is great to just do this like switch, like here's the
Hmm.
signal for the switch. And I think at an in-person game you could set up a signal like that. Um, to just to flag like I got some wiggles, I gotta get out, and then we
Hmm.
can go back to being incredibly grim and serious and doing
Yeah.
this meditation on death and loss.
That reminds me of that old fun trick to do at conventions when you encounter LARPers who are invisible and they have to cross their arms to show that they're invisible. And then you, who are not in the LARP, decide because you know what that means, just walk straight at them and act like they're not there in order to help them, just have a little bit of fun. Uh, that's what that reminded me of when you did that. What if you did this? And I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but like, what if you tried to do a serious game, but it was a game that had like an extraneous comical element, or at least an opportunity for the players to kind of let loose. Like, let's say your main player characters are mortals, but they also get to role play the gods, and the gods are juvenile and they like have mirth and mischief, and it's funny to them to mess with the lives of mortals, which are like kind of in the Greek or Roman mythology context of like life is really difficult and the gods are fucking with us because they
Yeah, the
know that
gods
they
are a
can.
cautionary tale of what not to be like.
Right. So like if you just gave the player characters, maybe that's too much power. You know what I mean? But like if you gave them characters that like could let loose, right? Like there's the cipher system. What's the one where you're basically Turok the dinosaur hunter? What was that?
Predation?
Yes. So everyone in that cipher version of the cipher system gets like a dinosaur pal. That's not what they call it, but they get like a dinosaur companion, and you
Yeah,
don't play your own companion. The person next to you plays your companion, right? And so like it's so
with
you
express permission to get into mischief.
right, right. And I'm wondering if you were able to do something like that where, the player characters have their main character and then they have a character that they can just kind of do some hijinks with to kind of get the wigglies and the gigglies out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes back to at the end of the day, like, what do you want to tell a serious story for?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, you can have a serious story for the person running the game that is about a theme or a concept that you want to explore in the world. But I think you also have to be really, really interested in the conflict and development of the characters in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have players who aren't interested in that conflict, like, I mean, the best let your wiggles out thing's never going to work. I think it comes down to like identifying the player group at the start of the day. And,
Yeah, like the player, everybody's got to have buy-in.
are you interested in a serious game about like these very serious themes in a very pretty serious setting?
Yeah, like if you wanted to just try to run a serious game, like that should be stated up front. You should give examples of like what that game looks like and what your expectations are, and then try to set up scenarios that were like, to give your players an idea of like what they're in store for. Because like I think the worst thing you could do is be like, well, I want to run a serious game, and then you try to run it and your players are like, whatever, dude. you know
Yeah.
oh, you hear that? There's a severe National Weather Service tornado warning until 10 p.m.
Wait, warning or watch?
Tornado warning. Yeah.
You okay?
We'll find out. There's no basement.
Are there sirens going off?
There was last night. We had the same thing happen last night.
Oh wow.
Tornadoes are a fantastical creature in Chicago because it's very difficult, as you know, for tornadoes to set down in the actual city because of buildings and pavement and stuff like that. So, or concrete. So the best tornadoes in Chicago's are the ones that kind of like start close to the lake and then just move up along the beach, so to speak, and then start to come inland. But there's been many tornado opportunities since I've lived here, and none of them have actually turned out. Maybe
Yeah.
this is the one.
I mean, like, yeah, I doubt it.
Well, just in case, Jesse, do we have anything else about tonal shifts or serious games or goof 'em ups or, you
Uh,
know,
I think I'm glad I did the check-in.
hmm
Uh, I think the check-in may have been more out of nervousness than anything else, but like I'm glad I did it, and I feel like I'm on the right course from the answers the players provided. And so I think if you want to run a serious game, you need to think about what is your release mechanism. Like, and you're going to
hmm
need, if you're going to do longer sessions, you need a release mechanism during play.
hmm
And you need that session zero buy-in from everybody. And I think you made a really great point of in your session zero or your elevator pitch, give an example of what you mean, what it's going to look like in game by when
right.
you say serious.
hmm Yeah, and then conversely, I would say if you want to have a more goofy game and you want to do voices as the GM or wild or like larger than life characters, you should be leery about taking the spotlight. So I would recommend if you're going to present larger than life characters, immediately use it to share the spotlight. Which is something that Jesse does very well is he shares the spotlight. And that's why, Jesse, you don't really have anything to worry about running a goofy game, because I think that you will take those goofy elements and you'll have your NPCs embody them, and then you'll immediately use that spotlight and place it on one of the player characters. So I
No,
think you're going to
thanks.
be just fine.
Yeah, I am cribbing like Doc Cochran from Deadwood, Joan Crawford, and a couple other people like for the voices right now. So it's a lot.
All right. And if it's not a lot for you, listener, and you would like to write into the Jaunty Mantis, what we're doing for our next season, season 4, is we are taking prompts from the audience. So if you are a curious gamer, you have a creative question for us, feel free to send it on in to jauntymantis@gmail.com. And hopefully we can get to it in season 4. We've got a great lineup already set, but we've got room for one or two more, I think, at this point. So, hey, if you have a creative question for these two curious gamers, jauntymantis@gmail.com.
And if you like what you hear, I checked in the other day. We have 13 5-star reviews on iTunes now.
Oh, wow.
Like we have like 5 or 6 comments, and I'm super grateful for those, but we've grown. Some people have actually gone in and left us 5-star reviews, which I'm like, oh, I wish I knew who they were, what they thought, so I could be like all blushing and like give them more of it. But yeah, so if you like the podcast, try and give us a review, please.
Yeah. Yeah. So feel free to reach out, give us a review, or get in touch with us, but please keep it brief. And until next time, get out there and get goofy with your role playing games. This does not have to be the most serious, epic thing ever.
Yeah, get you varmints.
That's
Get on
right.
out of here.
Get on, get out. Well, let me tell you something, Jesse. I'd have a bonus topic for you. This here's the Jaunty Mantis podcast with my co-host Jesse Sauer. I'm Maddie. Welcome. This is a podcast for tabletop role-playing games and people who like to play those games is curious and creative, and that's what we doing right now. Jesse.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
All right.
This has to do with our Riff's New West game that you
I
running.
see. That would explain then why we are speaking with this particular vernacular and style choice. We have set sail upon a bark of doing a bit for an extended period of time.
That's right. We don't go back. We only go forward, spinning out of control, but always forward. Jesse, my question has to do with this setting, New West, for Riffs, and the cadre of top-notch vampire hunters that are your player characters.
Why, yes. I would be most thrilled to answer these questions.
At what point does comedy go too far? At what point, this is based on something you said in our last riff session. You said, I hope y'all don't mind that I'm taking things a little bit goofy. And I said, a little bit goofy? We got a dog man. We've got a cactus man. We've got a little gnome who rides and drives and builds cars that run on magic. And we have a saloon bum who's sacking.
I would say that you are a professional seat warmer and connoisseur of finer spirits. I wouldn't use that disparaging turn of phrase to describe Tatum. He's a good gentleman.
Well, as you know, Tatum, that is how his OCC is described, and that they're Riff's New West source book.
And this is another thing that just goes credit to Riff's source book. In an early campaign, someone was at a tavern that I had placed in a town in far southern, what used to be Indiana, in the magic zone. And someone said, how much is a drink at this fair establishment? And I said, I don't rightly know. I can't find it in none of the books. As it turns out, the prices for drinks were in the character class description for the saloon bum, which my good friend Matty now plays.
That's right. His
14
name is,
world books in.
It's in just the right place. When you think of how much a drink costs, you think of the saloon bum OCC. Can we stop the accents now?
Yeah. We did way better on that, or not better, longer. We did way longer on that.
Yeah, don't use the words better to describe the train wreck that was.